tractor was my second move this year, and there wasn't a
Shabbat Shalom.
It's really nice to be together for Shabbat here at Westchester Reform Temple in our sanctuary, a space that many of us have been missing for the past many months. It's wonderful to be together here as a community for Friday night. I'm Rabbi Daniel Reeser, this is Cantor Amanda Kleinman, and we're joined in the leadership of this evening service by a whole crew of talented musicians, of course by our conductor and pianist Pete Malinverney, by Nadav Snir Zelniker on percussion, by Nir Naaman on woodwinds, saxophone and flute, by Eldad Zvulun on piano, and by Daniel Ori on bass. You'll hear a little more about this cadre of musicians. 4 of them form a band called Jazz Without Borders. You'll hear more about them and hear more from them a little later on in our service. Of course, we're together this weekend not just for Shabbat, but also moving into the holiday of 4th of July, our holiday of independence. I hope that for those of us who've come together in community this evening, we can remember that it's not just a day for celebrating our independence, but also our interdependence, remembering that this is not a time only for the pursuit of happiness, but also for the advancement of life and of liberty. Tonight, as we welcome Shabbat, we'd ask Vicki Kravitz and her son Max to come help us kindle lights as we prepare ourselves for this day of rest.
Amen.
We'll continue with words to welcome Shabbat, L'cha Dodi. They can be found in our prayer books on page 138.
Special melody for this July 4th weekend. The melody is actually called Lincoln's Nigun.
remain standing as we turn to page 146 for our call to prayer.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Page 150. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amcha ahavta. With everlasting love, we believe, God loves the Jewish people and all of humanity. And isn't that such a gift for all of us? We go through our lives feeling so often unloved, feeling rejected, feeling isolated, feeling alone. The writer John Steinbeck said that humanity's greatest misery is the feeling of being unloved, the feeling of being rejected. How wonderful is it that we, as a people, affirm that there's something out there, whether it's God or our community, something that loves us everlastingly, something that gives our lives enduring value, something that gives us transcendent meaning, even when we feel like our world has been shattered. So we join with the sages of our people in saying, Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael, blessed are you, our eternal God, who makes our lives worthy of love and helps us to feel less alone. Amen.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed.
Ve'ahavta
את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בהם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We'll continue with our song of freedom, page 158, Michamocha. 162.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד חטא, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
A rabbi mentor of mine described private prayer as giving yourself enough quiet to hear what it is that your soul is asking for. We invite you now to take a few moments for private prayer, to try and find the stillness and the quiet to hear what it is that your soul is asking for this week. You can spend this time either standing or sitting. Please pray privately.
It is my pleasure now to reintroduce the 4 wonderful musicians who are joining us this evening, in addition to our beloved Pete Malinverni. We have Nir Naaman, Eldad Zvulun, Danielle Ori, and all of you know Nadav Snir Zelniker. They are a group that is called Jazz Without Borders, and in honor of our Star-Spangled Shabbat this evening, they'll be presenting a special program that's called What's Jewish About the Great American Songbook. Before they start their program, though, I'll give a few words of introduction about Jazz Without Borders. Jazz Without Borders is a product of the vibrant and multicultural New York jazz scene, where Israeli-born musicians have had a strong presence in recent decades. Co-led by saxophonist Nir Naaman and drummer Nadav Snir Zelniker, and joined by pianist Eldad Zvulun and bassist Daniel Ori. All band members are active and in-demand musicians on the scene. This group is set to explore the common grounds of jazz traditions, Jewish and Israeli music. With concerts and workshops all over the tri-state area, the group brings a dynamic event, both entertaining and educational, to a wide variety of audiences. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Jazz Without Borders.
Good evening. It's so nice to be here this evening. Thank you so much, Rabbi Reither and Cantor Kleinman, for having us. It's a great honor to be here. So we opened with a song, Blue Skies, that was written by one of the most prominent figures in the American songbook, Irving Berlin. Now, Irving Berlin was one of the most prolific composers. He published over close to 1,000 works. He gave us some of the most iconic songs of the American songbook, such as Let's Face the Music and Dance, Cheek to Cheek. He wrote some great patriotic songs. We're here in the 4th of July weekend. Songs like God Bless America. And he wrote musicals too. This is the Army and White Christmas. So you may ask yourself, what's so Jewish about a composer who's dreaming of a white Christmas? Well, it turns out quite a few things. And for the sake of this evening, we have kind of I'm just going to focus on one of those things. And this is a harmonic innovation that Berlin brought. So, oops, sorry about that. So, the bridge of Blue Skies, the song we just played, the middle section goes like this. Now, something that really dazzled a lot of the listeners, a lot of the critics at the time, was a choice, a harmonic choice that Berlin does. So, in the popular song of the time, one of the conventions that we can still hear to this day was that different sections of a song would have a diatonic key. And it had a lot to do with the mood of the song, with the lyrics. For example, if we had a sad song, it would be a minor key. If we had more of a cheerful song, it would be in a major key. But what we see here is that the bridge is in a major key. All right? And then he goes to the minor 6th degree of the scale, which is borrowed from the same minor key. And that was very unusual for the time, especially when you consider the lyrics. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never had things going so right. And then that minor kind of spice, kind of like almost like a foreign spice that is thrown in there, but not just for a second. It keeps repeating that minor 6th in the melody, and that was really that brought so much drama to that section, and it turned out to be such a huge hit. Even to this day, people do their own versions of the song Blue Sky that we still hear. And if you're thinking where this is coming from, well, it most likely came from Berlin's home life. So Irving Berlin was born as Israel Beilin. He was the son of a cantor, and he grew up singing in shul with his father. He loved singing. And one of the modes that we often see in the prayer, also in klezmer music, is called a Fragish mode. I'll just play it a little bit. And what we see in this mode is that it's a major mode but lo and behold, we have that minor sixth in this mode as well. So when Berlin brought this change, it had a great reaction, and actually Berlin supported this assimilation of major and minor. Musicologists would call this modal interchange, a fancy term, but in Tin Pan Alley, it became known as the Jewish move. Yeah, the Jewish move. And the composers of Tin Pan Alley really loved this mood because it added so much drama, and there are a lot of songs that assimilated with the melody are slight, very subtle changes between major and to minor. It became so popular, in fact, that Cole Porter, who was not Jewish, by the way, immortalized this Jewish move in one of his famous lyrics by saying, "There is no love song finer, but how strange is the change from major to minor." So that's a little bit about Irving Berlin. And speaking of home culture, Berlin grew up speaking Yiddish. And Yiddish is a swinging language. So I'm going to ask my friend Nadav here. Nadav, you grew up listening to some Yiddish at home, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Let's be honest. They gave me this part of the evening because I'm the most Eastern European looking guy in the band. And so he was convinced I grew up around Yiddish culture, but it's true, I was. This is when jazz without borders become jazz without control. So, by the way, Cole Porter, non-Jew, but one of the only non-Jews in that top 5 or top 10 of the composer, once said after he had some 3 musicals that he wrote that were kind of not very successful, he said, "That's it. I know the secret. The secret. I need to write Jewish songs, Jewish tunes." But as far as Yiddish, all these composers that we're going to discuss tonight and demonstrate, all were immersed in Yiddish culture. They were all children of immigrants from Eastern Europe, very familiar with the English language at home, although all they really wanted to do is become Americans and assimilate and write music for all people, not Jewish necessarily. But Yiddish was very hot in their upbringing. I'll remind you that, I don't need to remind you, some people here probably lived through these times, and that's very humbling to see, but Yiddish theater was thriving in the Lower East Side before Broadway was born, and before these composers started being successful and known for their writing for Broadway, lyricists and composers. But the Yiddish theater has an incredible impact on them. The Yiddish theater was there to teach the audience, very colorful, very humorous, very dramatic, the use of the very colorful characters, the humor of the Yiddish language. By the way, Ira Gershwin, the brother of, was very, very much into puns, and his lyrics were always about humor and finding very funny connections. That was a direct influence from the Yiddish theater and Yiddish culture that he experienced. The Yiddish language is very, as my esteemed professor Nir Nauman said, a very swinging language. It has rhythm, it has ups and downs, right? Sometimes I heard my grandparents speak Yiddish at home, and I thought, they're bargaining. They're always bargaining. It always sounds to me like they're bargaining. No, but they were trying to hide stuff from us, of course, and that's how I got better with this. And then came the Andrews sisters, and the Andrews sisters were actually 3 Scandinavian girls who found a match between the Yiddish and the swing beat. And all these Jewish composers grew up in an era where a lot was going on musically. The popular swing beat at the time was swing music. Jazz was growing. And a lot of those composers were hanging out and very much in tune with what was happening in Harlem, in New York, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and it had a tremendous influence on them. A lot of the sounds, the language that the jazzers from uptown were using was very, very much in tune with the Yiddish swinging sound of what they heard. And so what I would like to do is a little demonstration of, let's find the connection, which is very, very natural, between the swing beat and the traditional Freilich and Jewish beats. And I'm going to play a little something, maybe an introduction from a tune all of you know, written by another famous Jew, Benny Goodman, who gave a stage to a famous drummer named Gene Krupa. And from that, Sing Sing Sing's was born. And we'll see how this connects to some Jewish themes.
So one of the highest and most important values in Jewish tradition is Tikkun Olam, right? And that's defined as acts of kindness performed to perfect or repair the world. And a great example of that is social justice, right? That's a great example of Tikkun Olam. In the early days of Broadway, musicals were mostly a mixture of comedy and romance and comedy, just simple, true entertainment stuff. And in 1927, a musical called Showboat premieres. And its storyline is much deeper, and it's tragic, and it's real. So not only the story deals with racial prejudice, but also Showboat is the very first musical to integrate African Americans and give them important roles. Jerome Kern, who composed the music for Showboat, is considered one of the most prolific and the highly regarded composers in the American songbook. And we know him, in addition to his catchy melodies and unforgettable tunes like The Way You Look Tonight and Yesterdays and This Song Is You and All the Things You Are, all these tunes. We know that Kern's Jewish roots and his upbringing, they have a clear imprint on the social justice theme in Showboat. We can see that. This musical was his first big Broadway success, and raising awareness for social justice as well as Showboat integrating African Americans into important roles, all of this is a true act of Tikkun Olam. And without a doubt, it's also a big part of Jerome Kern's legacy. So we're gonna play our favorite Jerome Kern tune, and this one is called Smoke It's in Your Eyes.
I'm sorry, Amanda, did we get the smoke machine for this tune as we requested?
Thank you very much. So we can't really talk about the American Songbook without mentioning one of its most prominent figures, Jacob Gershowitz. Have you heard that name before? Of course, you may know him as George Gershwin. So George Gershwin, born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1898, was a piano prodigy. At age 4, after listening to his older brother Ira having his piano lesson, he sat on the piano and started playing the same melody that his older brother was just learning in his lesson in 2 hands. And so the family started giving him lessons as well. And he grew up to be an incredibly virtuosic pianist. So when he was a teenager, he was looking for some guidance, some mentorship. And his father used to often take him to the Yiddish theater. We just heard a little bit about the Yiddish theater. And his father arranged for a meeting with him, with a great composer of the Yiddish theater called Shalom Secunda, who wrote by Mir Bistushain. And so after meeting with him, he told his father that he wasn't going to work with him because, quote unquote, he was too much American and too little Jew. And so he went to Tin Pan Alley at 16. He quit school. He went to work in Tin Pan Alley. And his first job was as the musical secretary of Irving Berlin. And one day, Berlin heard Gershwin just noodle on the piano, play some of the songs, and he got right out of his office and he said, "Hey kid, you go write your own songs. You're not going to work for me." And he fired him on the spot. So what was the young prodigy going to do? He needed some guidance. He needed some mentorship. So he turned to jazz. At the time, he lived with his family in Harlem, and he used to frequent the jazz clubs. And he found mentorship by the great stride master, great jazz pianist called Willie the Lion Smith, who was really a master of a style called stride, which is a combination of ragtime and blues. Very syncopated music. And you know what? That ended up being such a blessing for the young George Gershwin, because he already had a lot of background with Jewish music and klezmer music, but that opened him up to a whole new territory, and in result we got all these beautiful songs that we know by Gershwin, such as Fascinating Rhythm, I Got Rhythm, which we'll hear in a little bit. But before we hear that song, I just have to mention, I can talk about Gershwin without mentioning one of his most important works, which brings some Jewish values as well, which is Porgy and Bess. So keeping up with that tradition that we heard about Jerome Kern of social justice, Gershwin wrote the music to the play Porgy and Bess. And the cast for this, so Jerome Kern was the first who brought an integrated cast to Broadway. For Porgy and Bess, that was one of the first Broadway shows that had an all cast of black performers for Porgy and Bess. And I think even more importantly, the play really is about the disenfranchised in society. But Gershwin was also a disenfranchised in the society, and that brought a whole new perspective to writing the music. As a matter of fact, when he wrote the music, he moved for about 1 year to a little island off the coast of South Carolina, just to learn about the music and about the people who lived there. And he went to church once a week to hear the music. And one last little known fact about Porgy and Bess is that right before he wrote the music for Porgy, Gershwin was writing music for a play called The D-Book, about a person who studies Kabbalah, not careful with it, and gets in trouble. And he wrote music that had a lot of Jewish themes, really based on klezmer music. But he couldn't acquire the rights to go ahead and move on with the play. So what does he do? He takes the main aria that he wrote for the D-Book and turns it into Summertime. Yeah? So it was often told that the music of Summertime and of Porgy and Bess in general is somewhere between the cantorial to gospel and blues. And speaking of cantorial, Cantor Kleinman graciously agreed to sing a song with us. One of my favorite songs, and I think in this song we can see a little bit of another connection to Judaism, right?
That's right. So those of you who are regular service goers at WRT, you've definitely seen Nadav on the Bima. But what you might not know about Nadav as well is that he is also a favorite B'nai Mitzvah tutor at WRT. And so what you probably didn't realize is that Nadav also asked if we could give a quick B'nai Mitzvah lesson as part of our service this evening. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sing, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach. And what would you sing? So that is, as all of you know, and as Nadav is teaching us tonight, those are the melodies that we recite before and after we chant from the Torah. Those are our Torah blessings. And the song that I am about to sing, it's called It Ain't Necessarily So. It comes from Porgy and Bess, and the theme of the song is a questioning of stories from the Bible. And so you'll hear these themes of the Torah blessing as a little bit of a commentary within this piece of music. It ain't necessarily so. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah. You can listen for those themes in the song. It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, it ain't necessarily so. Little David was small, but oh my. Little David was small, but oh my. He fought big Goliath, who lay down and died. Little David was small, but oh my. Oh, Jonah, he lived in a whale. Oh, Jonah, he lived in a whale. For he made his home in that big whale's abdomen. Oh, Jonah, he lived in a whale. Don't get into heaven, don't snap for a seven. Keep clean, don't have no fall. Oh, I take that gospel wherever it's possible, but with a grain of salt. Methuselah, he lived in years. Methuselah lived 900 years. But who calls that living what no gallows given? No man, 900 years.
Thank you. Since we are talking about Gershwin, and we have another piece, I just want to add another very short unknown fact that has to do something that is very Jewish about it. It has to do with the title of that play. Was I don't know if you know, guys, but the original was Porky with a K, Porky and Bess, and Gershwin didn't like that. Did you know that? Eldad Zebulun, guys.
Thank you. Is that okay for talking? Was that meant for singing? Okay, I'll just make it work. So you've heard some of the compositions that Gershwin wrote, like Rhapsody in Blue, American in Paris, Embraceable You, Lady Be Good, I Got Rhythm. When Gershwin wrote I Got Rhythm in 1930, it was for the musical Girl Crazy. When he did that, he created one of the most catchy melodies in American history, but little did he know that this lovable song, apart from being a hugely popular jazz standard, would evolve into something far greater. This next quote is something that he said. True music must reflect the thought and aspirations of the people and time. My people are Americans, my time is today. Our time today, this day, is Parashat Pinchas. I'm going to take over for you, Rabbi, for a second, if you don't mind. Just to make a connection to what we are doing today, Parashat Pinchas, there's a section in there where God is commanding Moses to go up to the mountain and look over at the promised land, right? The land that he will not get to actually go into. One might say, this is my interpretation, right, that Gershwin maybe did not get to see the promised land. In 1937, at the age of 38, he died from a malignant brain tumor. This was just 2 years after the, by the way, commercial failure of Porgy and Bess. So let's go back to I Got Rhythm, because as the way that I see it, I Got Rhythm was his promised land. Beyond being a popular song at the time, I think what Gershwin didn't get to see is the impact that that specific song would have made for the jazz scene in general. So the song itself, on a basic level, just became the perfect vehicle for jazz improvisations. Swing and bebop musicians thrived on this formula, which is a very basic 32-bar AABA structure with an irresistible chord changes, which is now known as the rhythm changes, from I Got Rhythm, rhythm changes. Some of the most famous jazz musicians like Duke Ellington, Sonny Rollins, Nat King Cole, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, all wrote themes, melodies based on this rhythm changes. You can say that this formula, I Got Rhythm, rivals only to the blues structure as the most adapted, mimicked, and ripped off, depending on how you look at it, in the jazz idiom. So I'm going to try to attempt to sing I Got Rhythm. Days can be sunny with never a sigh. Don't need what money can buy. Birds in the trees sing their dreidful of song. Why shouldn't we sing along? I'm cheaper all the day, happy with my lot. How do I get that way? Look at what I've got. 1, 2, 1, 2, go. I got music, I got rhythm, I got my girl. Who could ask for anything more? I got daisies in green pastures. I got my girl. Who could ask for anything more? Old men trouble, I don't mind him. You won't find him round my door. I got starlight, I got sweet dreams. I got my girl. Who could ask for anything more? Who could ask for anything more? for anything more? Who could ask for anything more?
Yeah, Daddy.
One. Is this on? Here we go. So, to conclude this evening, or at least our portion in this evening, we ask ourselves, okay, so we do this program, but what does it really have to do with us? For Israelis, if you want, I can do the Israeli accent and do the whole lecture in the Israeli accent. It will be very nice, but what does this have to do with me?
Mensch.
And you sing beautifully with the Israeli accent. But honestly, while examining this topic and playing, and obviously these are songs that we're all listening to forever, probably we get a chance to reflect on our own journey. Born and raised Israelis who came to New York to explore jazz music, which is with no doubt a homegrown American art form that we all got fascinated with already in Israel. And where do we find our place, our voice, our path, and all that? And we find a lot of similarities with the journeys of those composers who really, all they wanted to do is become American, become the new generation, the assimilated, whether they were misfits or whether they were just extraordinary talented who found their voice in the crowd, or maybe both. We don't know, but we like to question and argue and play this music a lot. We are going to end with one of our own, Nir Naaman's composition, something of our own influence. This is called Dilemma. I want to thank Cantor Kleinman immensely for having us tonight. You just gave me an idea, since you guys are so lucky to have Pete Malin-Verney here. Maybe next time you have us, we'll do What's Italian about the American Songbook, because it ain't necessarily so. It's like, forget about it. But that's just an idea for another time. So thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Wish you all health. This is the first time, by the way, we play in person. So thank you so much.
I just want to thank our musicians one more time. Thank you to Nadav, thank you to Nir, to Eldad, to Daniel. I think we all learned something tonight. We all felt something tonight, and for many of us, this was really a first opportunity to experience live music again, and I know for me that's deeply meaningful, and we thank you for helping us to celebrate this Star-Spangled Shabbat. So lucky to have you here.
We'll turn our hearts and our thoughts now to people who we know or who we love who are in need of healing. And if there's someone who you're praying for this Shabbat, someone who would feel good to know that someone out there is praying for their healing, I'd invite you to rise in your place at this time and share that person's name aloud with the congregation. In addition to these names, we as a WRT community are praying for healing for Eliyahu Mecha Ben Sara, Robert Zagoria, Tony DeLappa, Gina DeLappa, Naomi Bat Moshe Esther, Mark Sosnowitz, Cliff Adler, Matthew Atwood, Melech, Stephen Blackman, Gloria Byron, Anthony and Elizabeth Danker, Mordechai Ben Yaakov, Georgette Nussbaum, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusey, Neil Glasskull, Leah Greenspan, Andrea Reiner, Chaim Ben Sipora, Masha Batsora, Aviva Tzila Bat Esther Bela, Jeffrey Millman, Ken Master, Mary Deutsch, Chava Batsara, Eliyahu Chaim Ben Fradel, Sheila Freed, Malka Tzipora Bas Rachel, Tamar Bat Malka, Heschel Meir Ben Davida Chana, Shai Aviad Ben Balfora, Howard Cowan, Rosa Aurora Ramirez Vera, and other names that we carry with us in our hearts.